the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant sat quietly by the sea. It had a seawall, 10 meters high. The tsunami was 14 meters. The water flooded the reactors, cooling systems failed. 3 reactors began to melt down. This is not a story about the disaster. This is a story about what happened after, when the world watched and waited for heroes. Yasuteru Yamada, 72 years old, retired engineer, cancer survivor. While the world panicked, he made a calculation that had nothing to do with mathematics and everything to do with sacrifice. I am 72 years old. On average, I have perhaps 13 to 15 years left. Even if I'm exposed to radiation, cancer takes 20 or 30 years to develop. Therefore, we older ones have less chance of getting cancer. Within weeks, Yamada assembled over 400 retired engineers, technicians, former power plant workers, all over 60, all volunteers. They called themselves the Skilled Veterans Corps for Fukushima. The government called them something else, the Suicide Corps. I want them to stop calling us the Suicide Corps or kamikazes. We're doing nothing special. I simply think I have to do something, and I cannot allow just young people to do this. The Japanese government initially refused their help, but Yamada persisted, and while he fought bureaucracy, another group of men had already made their choice. They were called the Fukushima 50, though they were never exactly 50, and they were never exactly the same men. They worked in shifts, 50 at a time, out of hundreds who volunteered. These were not soldiers, not special forces. They were technicians, engineers, control room operators, men with families, with mortgages, with dreams of retirement. Men who, when the order came to evacuate, looked at each other and said, "I'll stay." The reactor building was dark. We had flashlights. The radiation detectors were screaming. We wore these white suits, like paper. They don't protect you from radiation. They just keep the radioactive dust off your skin. That's all. We crawled through tunnels where the water was ankle deep, sometimes knee deep. You couldn't see the radiation. You could only see the numbers on your dosimeter climbing. That was the horror of it. Invisible death. They worked in rotating shifts, sleeping on floor mats in the plant's emergency bunker, eating military rations, breathing through respirators that dug into their faces. They were exposed to radiation levels 5 times the legal limit, and they kept going back. A radiation expert from Albert Einstein College of Medicine called them heroes. But here's what makes this story uniquely Japanese. We are not heroes. We are doing our job. This is Gaman, endurance, patience. Every Japanese person understands this. You do what must be done. Ishinomaki City. Kenichi Kurosawa, 40 years old, a plumber. On March 11th, he was working 12 kilometers from home when the ground began to shake. I called my wife. She was in a bank. I told her, "Go home. I'll meet you there." Then the line went dead. Kurosawa jumped in his car. He drove toward the tsunami, not away, toward, because his wife was in that direction. Cars were passing me going the opposite direction, evacuating. I kept going. Then I saw them, cars in the distance, but they weren't on the road. They were floating, bobbing like toys. That's when I understood. The water was already there. He made a U-turn, but the water was ahead of him too. They were trapped. There was a man running, on foot. Kurosawa pulled him through the car window. They sped together, but the water was faster. They abandoned the car, ran. The water chased them like a living thing. Kurosawa saw a pine tree, 3 meters up. He climbed. A branch broke. He fell. He climbed again. I wrapped my legs around the branch. The water came up to my knees, then my waist. It was so cold, it chilled me to the bone. I saw people in cars gripping their steering wheels as they washed away. I saw others clinging to trees that fell. I thought of my wife. I had spoken with her for 15 seconds. That was all. He clung to that tree for 6 hours, through freezing temperatures, through the dark. In the morning, he climbed down into a world that no longer existed. I walked through what was left of my city. It looked like a bomb had destroyed it. Boats in the streets, buildings collapsed. I didn't know if my wife was alive. She was. She had evacuated to a school on high ground, but they lost everything else. Friends, home, the landmarks that make up a life. People ask how I feel 10 years later. I feel like I am still living on that extended timeline, still trying my best. I drive past that tree sometimes. I even tried to climb it once, just to remember. One thing I learned, people need to live among each other. The hope lies in us. Mizuhama, a fishing village of 380 people, average age over 60. They had 15 minutes warning. A 20-meter tsunami was coming. In 15 minutes, they evacuated 98% of their population. How? We practice every year. We know who lives in every house, who is elderly, who lives alone. When the earthquake hit, I did not run to high ground. I ran to my neighbor's house. He's 80. I pushed him up the hill. This is collective heroism, not one man standing alone, but a community standing together. They shared food, they shared fuel, they conserved. They survived 4 days isolated from the world, without panic. We lost 90% of our homes, all but 4 of our 50 boats. But we said, we will not let this defeat us. If we support each other, we can come back. This is not special. This is what it means to be Japanese. Yasuteru Yamada never got to enter Fukushima. The government eventually thanked his skilled Veterans Corps, but insisted they had enough workers. Yamada died in 2018, never knowing if his sacrifice would have made a difference. But it did. It showed the world what courage looks like when it wears reading glasses. The Fukushima 50, who were really the Fukushima 180, then 600, then thousands, prevented a complete nuclear catastrophe. Many have suffered health consequences they don't discuss. They don't consider themselves heroes. Kenichi Kurosawa still lives in Ishinomaki. He teaches disaster preparedness now. He climbs trees less often, but he remembers. And the men of Mizuhama rebuilt their village, not with technology, with the technology of the mind, community, discipline, and the willingness to push an elderly neighbor up a hill while death chases from behind. The Japanese have a word, Gaman, endurance, patience, the ability to persevere. But in March of 2011, it meant something more. It meant staying when you could leave, climbing when you could fall, pushing when you could run. These men carried the weight of silence, the radiation you cannot see, the wave you cannot outrun, the knowledge that courage is not the absence of fear, but the presence of duty. They would tell you they did nothing special. They would be wrong. For the men who stayed,